Sayin Podcast, episode number 20. Me and Jake been doing this for a little bit now, so we're super excited to be back on and talk some college football with you guys after one of the best weekends in a while. A lot of upsets, a lot of games that I didn't see really happening, and we'll get to those for sure. But just overall, what do you think about the college football week? I know you got to sit at home this week, so you had a fun.
I kind of did. I didn't sit at my house. I drove down to Cumming, and me and some of my friends watched at one of his parents' house. But they got a movie room, so that's where we watched, of course, the big Penn State Ohio State game, and then also Bama Tennessee. And got to watch a lot on my phone. And once I got back to the house, I did not stay up after for Pac-12 after dark, but was able to watch Utah USC, and I definitely have some takeaways from that as well.
Yeah, I wish I could have stayed up for Pac-12 at dark because I went to bed around probably midnight
Scary,
Eastern
scary,
time,
scary.
and I saw the Washington score. I was like, oh man, that's not good, especially when you're going against a third string quarterback for Arizona State. But we'll get into that game here in a little bit. But I want to start here in Tuscaloosa, the game I was at, where let me just tell you, baby, that cigar has never had a cigar that's tasted any better. The
That's
Vol Pack,
disgusting.
the
That's
Vol Pack
disgusting.
tasted like victory, if I do say so myself. Alabama 34, Tennessee 20. And guys, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm at halftime, I was almost ready to throw in the towel. I I I did not see that was the second half of the Arkansas game and the first half of the Alabama Tennessee game were back to back two of the worst halves I've ever seen by a Nick Saban coach team. But whatever he said at halftime worked because that team came out and scored 27 unanswered points. Not only was the offense much better, but Jake, I know I sent you the tweet. Here's the Tennessee offense in the second half versus Alabama: punt, turnover on downs, punt, fumble for a touchdown for Alabama, punt, turnover on downs, end of the ball game. So that Alabama defense, they weren't even that bad in the first half. They just could not. They were on the field the whole first half because our offense couldn't sustain drives, and that's something I was worried about, heading into this game, and we talked about it on last show. And it did happen in the first half, but man, they were able to come out in the second half. Jalen Milroe on that first drive hooked up with Isaiah Bond for a 50-yard touchdown after a good run from Jason McClellan, and they just kind of took off from there. I mean, it was off from there like a rocket almost. Um, a great second half, probably the loudest it's ever been in Bryant-Denny Stadium. One of the best memories I've had as a student at Alabama. But man, Alabama's defense is just suffocating, and definitely one of the best defenses in college football.
Yeah, it was a great game to watch. Tale of two halves, of course. Tennessee kind of owned the first half. My thing was I never thought Bama was out of it for a second because Joe Milton was playing at an unforeseen level we've seen him play at ever. He was playing really well. For the first quarter, he was playing like that. Second quarter, he slowed down a lot. So I know I told you one of the graphics they put up, he was 7 for 7 for like 100 yards on his first seven throws. And then he went like 4 for 10 with 19 yards. So we ultimately saw the same Joe Milton in the second quarter. And then in the second half, I mean, it was just brutal. One, the receivers weren't getting open like they were in the first half. Because I don't know if you were able to see it. And Terrion Arnold went down in the second half. And apparently once he went down, I mean, the corners started to become lockdown because they were getting open on all sorts of comebacks and hitches. And then in the second half, that just wasn't happening. And then also, if they were, Joe Milton could not hit them. He was playing awful the second half. So I just knew he couldn't sustain that. Their defense gave it a ride. And it was kind of surprising because we know how bad Bama dominated that second half. But I mean, they had a chance to win or at least to tie with 8 minutes left. If Joe Milton has any sort of pocket presence, he sat in there for like 5-7 seconds. Great job by Chris Braswell, but it was on a delayed rush too, and then had to go around the tackle. I don't know what Joe Milton was doing. He didn't sense him, fumbled, but just kind of crazy that they were still in it. And both of us bet Tennessee. That was my lock of the week for Tennessee to cover, and I would say it should have happened. But Tennessee sucks, and they couldn't score on 4th and 5 in the goal line. They went 0 for 3 within the 10-yard line on touchdowns. They settled for field goals in two of them, and obviously that last one turned it over on downs. But great game from Bama. I mean, because I know I asked you in the last show, I said, do you think it's what we've seen them do where they go down at half and then they come back? That's
Yeah.
what I thought was going to happen. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And honestly, from a Georgia perspective here, that I like that game because it does not scare me for Tennessee anymore. Before that game, I kind of was, but now I've seen the best they can play and just know they can't sustain that for 4 quarters.
Well, I wouldn't say I don't think they can. I definitely think they can. But at halftime, and I was talking to one of our good friends, Peyton Black, a Tennessee fan, and he was talking about at halftime. I mean, what you said, the tale of two halves is perfect. But at halftime, they made zero adjustments.
Zero.
But in Alabama made all the adjustments, and that's a learning curve with a new head coach. I know Heupel is in his second or third year at Tennessee. He's going to have a learning curve. He's still a young head coach in the SEC. Uh, I think he's going to make the change. I think he's a really good quarterback coach, good offensive mind. And like you said, that the Joe Milton of the first half was what I thought we would see all season. That's why I predicted him to be a Heisman Trophy winner. When he went out there and played the first quarter, I was terrified because I was like, this is the guy that we haven't seen all year. And of course, Alabama is going to be the one that makes him look like a Heisman Trophy winner. It'll be the same thing when Alabama plays Auburn. Peyton Thorne will go off for like 200 yards or something crazy.
That
But
one's a little bit of a stretch.
but Joe Milton was their leading rusher. I mean, every time he took off, he was getting some good yardage. We didn't really have anyone spying on him because he doesn't typically run in games. I mean, he had 15 carries in this game. That has to be a career high. So, in Alabama, I think another thing is we talked about the Tennessee run game. Alabama stopped the Tennessee run game. They could not run. They were 0 for 2, 0 for 2 on 2 fourth down and ones, and Alabama stopped them on both fourth. And that was insane. I mean, just great defense, getting penetration up the middle. Just they could not stop them. Yes, one play was a busted play that Joe Milton probably should have gotten a first down with, but you got to give credit to the Alabama defense and Kevin Steele for dialing up those play calls. Just, I mean, effort, 110% effort on every single play from the defense in the second half. Really picked up the offense like they have all year. And the offense responded. And I think Alabama kind of knows. I disagree with you about Alabama being down in the first half. I thought it'd be opposite because of after the Arkansas game. But I mean, it's pretty clear what Alabama is as a team now. They're a second half team. They're a team that's going to look for adjustments at halftime, and that's just kind of what happened. And maybe they continue. I think they're continuing to get better. Like I said, Jalen Milroe, the interception really wasn't an awful throw. Burton, going back and watching that play, Burton had a better shot at the ball than what he gave it. And it was a nice deflection that, right there, the guy was in the right spot at the right time. And the fumble wasn't on Milroe either. I mean, he did stay in the pocket for a little bit too long, but Caden Proctor got blown up on that play like he has been all year. You got to kind of know that you have a liability at left tackle. You can't stand in there all season, all year like he's done that. But I didn't hate the fumble. Yes, it was like super unfortunate, but it wasn't all on Milroe. I thought Milroe had a really good game. And, Tommy Rees in the second half was starting to utilize his legs a lot more, which I really like. And he needs to have those scripted plays where he runs the ball. And I thought the Rees play calling in the first half was atrocious. The second half, much better. Jason McClellan had a really good game running the football, 27 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. He was a horse. So overall, really good game for Alabama. We found out who our number one receiver is. It's pretty clear it's Jermaine Burton now. And Amari Niblack's a really good number 2 option. Isaiah Bond's another really good option. So we're starting to really find our identity as an offense. We kind of know what we are as an offense now. It's no secret to the other teams that we play. And I think we can really match up with any team in the country, especially with the way our defense is playing. And we've got 2 really good specialists, and that always helps with Reichert and Burnham. So really good team win from Alabama. I don't know if you have any more thoughts before we jump over to the game of the day.
Yeah, no, that's all for me. Let's go ahead and head over to the Big Ten where we saw 2 of the top.
How heartbroken were you for your Nittany Lions squad?
It was sad. The reason I wasn't super upset is because they sucked. But we did watch a battle of probably 2 of the top 3 defenses in the nation. Right now, I would give it to I would say top 2. I would say Bama's number 3, and they're the top 2. I mean, they both looked elite, and I get it. The quarterbacks did not look great. I mean, Kyle McCord had Marvin Harrison, and we'll get into that. But I mean, Drew Aller looked atrocious. Drew Aller looked really bad. But also, that Ohio State defense didn't do them any favors. They were suffocating. JT Tuimoloau, I think I said it on the last show. I was scared for him coming into our Peach Bowl against him. Didn't do anything. He only shows up in this game. I don't know what it is.
He just has a vendetta against Penn State.
He must have, because he played well.
Yeah.
And they were without Denzel Burke and Travion Henderson. And Ohio State still found a way to get it done. The thing that comes down to it in this game is the lack of weapons on Penn State's side, where I mean, I don't know how much of the game you watched. They're running the ball effectively with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, especially Nick Singleton. And then once they found out that they don't have any weapons that can get open. I mean, they just started guarding the box, and Penn State could not move the ball. They didn't have a single snap inside the red zone until the last minute of the game, whenever they scored the garbage time touchdown. So I was upset. I still don't think this takes Penn State out of their playoff hopes. It does make Michigan a must win because they have to win that game. But I mean, Ohio State looked good. I know we clown Ryan Day for what he said about them having a tough team, but they do this year. It's different than it's been in the past, where this is a defensive led team. Because without Marvin Harrison, this offense is atrocious. They're bad. Kyle McCord cannot lead anyone. And their run game is very suspect because their O-line play is not that great either. So there were a lot of injuries in this game as well. Chop Robinson, Penn State's probably number 2 defender, went down with an injury. It looked like a really bad concussion, so I don't know when he'll be back. And like I said, Denzel Burke, Travion Henderson didn't play, so I mean, good for Ohio State to get out of Columbus with a win.
Yeah, and like you said, I couldn't help it when I was watching this game on my phone. They kept panning to CJ Stroud on the sideline, and I couldn't help but think if CJ Stroud was a quarterback of this Ohio State team, they would be the obvious number 1 team in the country. And I think that having Kyle McCord as their quarterback is going to catch up to them at some point in the season, whether that is Michigan when they play them the last game of the season, or when they get to the playoff. Having him as their quarterback, he's a good player, but he's not the Ohio State caliber quarterback that we're used to seeing, and definitely a flaw on their offense. Not to mention their offensive line is pretty good for what they lost last year, but I think that also catches up to them at some point in the season, especially with Chop Robinson going down in this game. That definitely, ended up being a lot better for the Ohio State team. But one thing, and like you said, we talked about it last week, the thing I took away before this game was even played, and obviously Ohio State with an 8-point win, Penn State has no weapons besides their 2 running backs. It's basically Drew Aller out there by himself, and they got away from the run game in this game, and I really don't know why. Like you said, Singleton was running the ball pretty effectively when they handed it to him, but I felt like they were trying to be way too cute. They were putting the ball in Drew Aller's hands, which they should. He's their leader, he's their quarterback. But you got to lean on that run game when you know what you have there. And especially when they're running the ball really well, you got to keep going with that. Even though it's on the road, you're down points, you have to keep going. I mean, I thought every time Penn State's punter was out there almost just as he was touching the ball just as much as Nick Singleton was touching the ball in this game. I mean, every time I watched them, I felt like they were 3 and out, they were going to punt. And that's just kind of what these teams in the Big Ten, I think, identity are. We still don't even know. And that's what's great about college football, and that now that we're halfway through the season, we're starting to figure out what teams' identities are. Except Michigan's still the outlier because obviously they hadn't played anybody. But we know what Ohio State and Penn State are going to do this year. They're going to play really good defense and try to run the ball and occasionally get a little pop pass, kind of like Alabama. Really, all 3 offenses are pretty similar, different quarterback styles, but pretty similar in the way they're trying to attack a defense. And obviously Ohio State being at home probably gave them a few extra points in this game. But if this game was played on neutral field, Ohio State still wins the game. I think it's a field goal game maybe. But Ohio State's a really good team. Penn State's still a really good team. I'm not really going to knock Penn State at all for this loss. But like you said, it's do or die mode for them now when they play Michigan. They have to win that game or their season's basically over, which stinks for them. But Michigan's going to be a lot more fresh than them since they haven't played as good of opponents. So it sucks for Penn State, but at the same time, you got to give props where they're due, and that Ohio State deserved the win. They played better. They were the better team. They are the better team still to this day. And talent just wins out, Jake. I mean, that's kind of what happens. And Marvin Harrison, whether you have 20 more talented dudes or one, if that guy is a game breaker like Marvin Harrison is, it does not matter. And that's exactly what we saw. They continued to go after him. They continued to feed their best player. And that's what good teams do. And that's what good teams, especially to this point in the season, need to rely on before they're viewed as complete. And Ohio State, I mean, they kind of checked all the boxes there in this game.
Yeah. Penn State's still obviously a top 10 team, but the area they lost this game, you just have to look at one stat. They were 1 for 16 on third down. They could not stay on the field. Like you said, their punter was always out there.
Yeah.
Ohio State, not much better. I mean, a lot better than them, but they were 6 for 16, not amazing. But the reason they were 6 for 16 was because of Marvin Harrison. He reminded us he is the best receiver in college football because this year it's looked like maybe he's not. Keon Coleman, Malik Neighbors, Luther Burden, maybe they're one of the best. Nope. It's Marvin Harrison. It's not close. He has that game breaking ability that the others, I mean, they possess, but not to this level.
All right. So good game for there. Good talks for the first two. Those are definitely the games of the day. But I want to go to the biggest shocker of the day. And that is the Virginia Cavaliers beating the North Carolina Tar Heels on the road in freaking well, what's the name of the town? Chapel Hill. Sorry. I was thinking Durham. I was thinking Duke. But at Chapel Hill, 31-27 is your final, Virginia over North Carolina, a team who I had ranked 11th last week. Don't really know what to say. I mean, Virginia receiver Washington, 12 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown, went off. Tez Walker went off, 11 catches, 146 yards and a touchdown. Drake May didn't have bad stats. I didn't really get to watch this game. I just kind of saw the final score and was just like, wow. Because I thought Virginia was one of the worst teams in college football. But when you look at this, North Carolina won the turnover battle, 1-2. The teams both had the same amount of first downs at 26. North Carolina even outgained them in yardage by almost 60 yards. But the time of possession, go back to that all the time. 37 minutes for Virginia to the 22 of North Carolina. North Carolina's defense has gotten a lot better, but they are not at the caliber of a contending team that they should be. And when another team possesses the ball for 7 minutes longer than your offense, keeping that defense out on the field, it's never going to be good, especially in a game like this where UNC should have TOP, all advantage, all on their side, especially at home. The offense just wasn't able to keep them out on the field for as long as they needed to. Too many explosive plays, which could be a good thing, but actually turned out to hurt UNC in the end. Obviously, I'm going to drop UNC in my poll that we're going to talk about a little bit later. I mean, this is just an embarrassing, ugly loss for them. And couldn't come at a worse time for me personally, considering how I picked them to win the ACC last week with a win over Florida State. But, they still obviously could win out and go to the ACC championship. And heck, they could even win the ACC championship and possibly make the playoff. But let me tell you, this is probably going to land them on the uh-oh list because now they have no margin for error. And this was one of the ugliest losses of the year so far that I've seen.
Yeah, Virginia was probably the worst Power 5 team coming into this game. They were 1-5, atrocious. They haven't looked good in a single game. Who was their one win? It was someone really
someone. You keep talking and I'll find it.
Yeah, it was William and Mary, 27-13. But they've lost to Tennessee, James Madison, Maryland, NC State, Boston College. So not an easy schedule, but their one win came over obviously a bad William and Mary team. But this was just weird. It was 31-27, and I thought it said at half. So I just kept watching whatever game I was watching. Then I found out like 5 minutes later, the game was over. And I just didn't believe it because, like I said, coming into this game, and still, Virginia is not a good team. It's just one of those upsets. That's why college football is so great because this can happen. It's every given Saturday. But, I mean, you said it. It comes down to that time of possession. I mean, that UNC defense was just gassed. Now, I didn't get to watch the game, but you can box score scout this game where, I mean, it's pretty much even throughout the whole game except for turnovers, except for that time of possession. That's where the biggest difference is. And that's, of course, what it came down to. And, I mean, like you said, Tez Walker had a huge game. Amari and Hampton had a huge game. That North Carolina offense was not the issue in this game. It was the defense. What we came into the season saying it was. And then we thought our problems were fixed. Thought everything was cleaned up, and then this game comes around and Virginia hangs up 31 on you and you lose the game. So that's why college football is so great every given Saturday. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen?
there's going to be a lot of looking in the mirror for Mac Brown and his team this upcoming week. That's for sure. But hey, like I said, North Carolina fans, they still have everything to hope for and root for because only one loss, and we know that if you have one loss, your season is still alive. So enough of that. I want to get your take on a game that I was also sort of paying attention to before the Alabama game was happening. Another super surprising score. UCF 29, Oklahoma 31. Were you able to watch this game? And if so, I mean, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I was able to watch it a little bit. And I think my takeaway from this game is what I have with pretty much this week in, Washington, Texas, although we'll talk about that game. Washington, Texas, Oklahoma, these games, it's what North Carolina couldn't do. You found a way to win against an obviously inferior opponent. And they were at home. They had all the advantage. This game was good. I mean, it wasn't a fluke, and Oklahoma needed that fourth quarter to win. If you just look at the box score, they were trailing 23-17 coming into the fourth quarter. And so they needed that. And Dylan Gabriel had himself a day, 25 for 38, 253 with 3 touchdowns and interception. But the biggest difference is, and we talked about it, UCF has not looked good this year. This was they still don't have a Big 12 win, which is surprising. But John Reese Plumlee was back, and he was the difference, where he was 16 for 30, 248 with 2 touchdowns. He looked good throwing the ball to Javon Baker. He was the Alabama transfer. Five receptions, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, blew a kiss to Oklahoma sideline. I'm sure you saw that.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, this was a great game. It was fun to watch. And Oklahoma, it seemed like they had it kind of in the bag. I just felt like I know they were trailing coming into the fourth quarter, but I didn't think they were going to lose. It just didn't seem like one of those games. Just felt like UCF was always just going to be up by 5 points, and Oklahoma was going to pull it out at the end. And that's exactly what happened, where, I mean, UCF came that close to pushing it to overtime by missing a 2-point conversion, but it's good by Oklahoma, because this is a game where we see them lose in the past. It's just that Big 12 nature, where the number 1 team, they lose this game. Texas, they lose to Houston. Oklahoma, they lose to UCF. And so maybe we'll see the 12-0 Oklahoma and 12-0 Texas face off in the
11-1 Texas. They've already lost.
Sorry, yeah, 11-1.
So obviously going into the season, I picked UCF to go to the conference championship game. And this is the exact UCF team that I thought we'd see throughout the entire season. You can tell when they have John Rice Plumlee in there at quarterback, they're a different team than when they haven't had him in. Yeah. And that Javon Baker, Kobe Hudson wide receiver duo is one of the better ones, honestly, in the Big 12. I mean, they both were outstanding on Saturday, especially on the road in a outstanding environment. I know Kobe didn't put up as much yards, but he's been outstanding this year and just in total, especially when Plumlee hasn't been there. I mean, those 2 guys have really stepped up for this offense, even though they're 3-4. But this UCF team is not a bad team. I know they're 3-4, like I just said, but they legitimately could be a better, like 5-2 team the way they played this year. And they gave Oklahoma their ride, like you said. You got to give props to Oklahoma for hanging in there and getting the win. Uncharacteristic of former Big 12 teams, for sure. I know I was watching this game with keen interest. It was actually on the billboard at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So it was pretty interesting to watch, especially when Javon Baker blew the kiss to the sideline. Alabama Stadium kind of got hyped for that for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it was a really fun game to watch, going back and forth watching this game. And like you said, Oklahoma, tough team. Danny Stutzman, I really like him. He's a fun player to watch play defense. I mean, he kind of reminds me of the Boz that they used to have a little bit back in the 80s and 90s. Just a hard-nosed, tough football player at OU. So won't really get much into it, but it's kind of the same thing. And we'll kind of transition this to Texas, like you were saying. But obviously the story out of that game is the Quinn Ewers injury. The same AC joint that he injured last year against Alabama. It's a grade 2 sprain. Sark announced today. He's going to miss some time. And if last year is any indication of how much time he's going to miss, he missed 6 weeks last year. So he could potentially miss the rest of the regular season, possibly the postseason. So that begs the question. We saw Malik Murphy in this game. My roommate, Robert Smith, he is a very informed Texas fan from his childhood. So he knows kind of what's going on in the program right now. he likes to think Arch is the better passer, which I probably do agree with. Arch probably is the better passer of the two. But we saw Malik Murphy, and I think that's very important because Malik Murphy is a very capable player. He's a very good passer. He's a really good runner. He has a little bit more experience than Arch. He's been in the system for a little bit longer. But who will we see the rest of the year if this Ewers injury proves to be kind of how it was last year? My guess is I think we'll see the guy who's a little more experienced, and that's Murphy until he does bad. Obviously next week, who do they have next week? They have BYU next week. They host BYU. Obviously not a huge game. Definitely an in-conference game that they should win. I think they're favored by 19 points. And with that Ewers injury, that line might actually go down. So if you're on BYU, you may want to take a look at that line as the week goes on. But this kind of shakes things up for Texas. I mean, how are they going to look with a new quarterback? I don't think there'll be a ton of drop-off, but Quinn Ewers is one of the better quarterbacks in college football, and he's done some wonders for this Texas team in his last couple of years being there. Obviously, Houston had played out of their mind. I didn't think this game would be very close at all. But Dom Smith, the quarterback over there, transfer from Texas Tech, looked fantastic. Houston really hung in there, but like you said, good teams find a way to win at the end. And Texas, even more impressive to me than Oklahoma, obviously on the road and doing it without their starting quarterback at the end of the game. Murphy only threw, I think, 3 passes in this game, and he played for the whole fourth quarter. So Texas was able to do it on the ground with their physicality on offense and their 2 really good running backs in Baxter and Brooks. And I think as a Texas fan coming out of that, you have to take that as a positive, and just take it into next week. I know you're worried about Ewers, but honestly, that's the best thing I think they could have hoped for coming out of that game.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They find a way to win. It took them paying the refs because I don't know if you saw the very end of the game. I don't know what the refs were seeing. And were you able to see it?
I didn't get to watch the end of the game.
So there was about 40 seconds left. Houston was driving. They had just converted like a 4th and 3. And so it was 3rd and 1 at like the 10-yard line. And they were going to score. Maybe they get a goal line stop. They were going to score. They were going to force this game into overtime. They still probably end up losing, but still. So 3rd and 1 3rd and 1. And Houston runs the ball. Obviously gets over the line, way over the line, probably a yard past. For some reason, they mark him down behind the line. I'm like, all right, that's fine. They're going to go review it. It'll be okay. They'll get a new fresh set of downs. They don't review it. No clue why. 0 clue. Dana Holgerson was fired up. And I would have gotten thrown out of the game if I was the head coach because I don't know why they don't review it because he was a yard past the line. So it just made me mad as a college football fan to watch because obviously you root for upsets every time you can see one. And so you want to see Houston go win this game. And the refs took it out of their hands. You hate to see it like that, but it is what it is. Texas, they found a way to win. I mean, obviously, like you hit on it. Quinn Ewers, biggest takeaway from this game. How long is he out? And Texas kind of lucky. They have no one left on their schedule until the conference championship. They play BYU, Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State, Texas Tech. Looks like Michigan scheduled as they've played so far. So that's going to be 5-0 unless they choke a game, which it is Texas, so they could very well do that. But it is going to be interesting how they follow up this Quinn Ewers injury. Does Malik Murphy play good? Does Arch Manning show an appearance? So I'm interested to see that. Will make me watch the rest of the season for him.
Yeah. Well, how about let's transition this back to the SEC. We'll only do one more SEC game, but I think you know where this is going. Let's go ahead and give a clap, around the tree. Peyton Thorne actually threw for 100 yards on the dot. He threw for 100 yards. So congratulations to him, his first 100-yard passing game as an SEC. Well, no, he did 102 last week. Whatever. Congratulations to Peyton Thorne. By the way, I've been on the Auburn On 3 board. They absolutely hate Peyton Thorne.
Obviously.
Hates him. But at the same time, who else are they going to have? Robbie Asher threw a pick in this game. Peyton Thorne threw a pick in this game. So, I mean, he was 9 of 13 for 100 yards, a touchdown, interception. And that last touchdown Auburn scored was a garbage time touchdown. This game should have ended 28-14, but obviously Pete Golding sucks, and Ole Miss still covered the spread, winning 28-21 at Auburn. But I was really surprised by the way Ole Miss attacked the Auburn defense. Only 17 passes for Jackson Dart in this game. He went 10 of 17 for 202 yards, a touchdown, interception. Quinshon Judkins, you can tell when he plays Auburn and when he plays Alabama, when he goes back in his home state, it's personal. 21 carries for 124 yards and a touchdown. He went to Pike Road High School, which I think is just like 20 minutes outside of Auburn, and was not recruited by Auburn nor Alabama. And he showed up and showed out in this game. He showed you why he's the best running back in the SEC, despite his early struggles this year. Ole Miss controlled this game the entire game. There was never a doubt that they were going to not win the game, in my opinion, at least. I don't know if you were able to catch the game, but I know that the voodoo in Jordan Hare is alive, and it's always a factor. And believe me, if this game was played at Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss probably wins this game by 21, 24 points. That just goes to show you how much home field advantage is at Auburn. It's worth a lot more points than it is other places. And Ole Miss, I thought Ole Miss just controlled this game from beginning to finish. Even though they're a little lackluster on defense, especially there towards the end of the game, their offense makes up for it. Lane Kiffin, obviously a great play caller. They're a very balanced offense as well, and that it goes to show that. And as a Georgia fan, you guys got Ole Miss coming up soon. I wonder what your takeaway is. Are you a little bit more worried after watching them play this year, or is it just another game on the schedule to you, especially now that you don't have Brock?
Yeah, no, it's still just another game on the schedule to me. I disagree. I think this game was in reach for Auburn the whole entire time. I do think Ole Miss controlled it, but I mean it was 14-14 at the end of the half. It was 21-14 going into the fourth quarter. So if Auburn had, and this is what I was going to say, if Auburn has any sort of a QB, they potentially beat Georgia. They potentially beat Ole Miss because I mean Peyton Thorne played so much worse in this game than he did against us, even though he had 100 passing yards. I mean, Auburn, if they just had a QB, they would be able to get some key wins at home. And so, I mean, I'd still be scared if I was a Bama fan going into Jordan Hare because there's some voodoo there. They're so much better at home than they are on the road. I think they're a top 20 team at home, even with Peyton Thorne at QB. But the biggest thing for Ole Miss, they just couldn't sustain their drives. I know they had 425 yards. They had 21 first downs, over 34 minutes of time of possession. They were 2 for 11 on third down. They couldn't sustain it. The Auburn defense was pretty suffocating, and it was loud in there. I watched the first 3 quarters. I stopped watching in the fourth because I was watching Utah USC. But it was a great game. It just makes you think, what if Auburn had a QB? And like I said, this game, I mean, the Alabama-Tennessee game made me less scared for Tennessee. This game made me less scared for Ole Miss because, I wasn't scared of Jackson Dart coming into the game. I'm not as high on him as you are, but he didn't play well this game. They still found a way to win. Good for them. 21 carries, 124 yards for Quinshon Judkins. But they won't be able to run the ball against Georgia like that. They're going to force Jackson Dart to win the game. And I don't think he can do it. He didn't do it against Bama. He didn't do it this game. He did do it against LSU, but that defense, obviously, atrocious. So I'm not any more scared than I was coming in. I'm less scared, actually.
I guess I want to re-say what I was thinking to begin with. I do. Well, I thought that Ole Miss was in control mainly because I knew the Auburn offense wasn't going to do anything in terms of moving the ball, even on a bad Ole Miss defense. I mean, we know this defense is not very good at all, and Auburn also kind of like Ole Miss just had really no momentum. But I knew after halftime, Kiffin was going to make I trusted Kiffin to make the adjustments more than I did Hugh Freeze. And it's not even just that I think Kiffin's a better coach than Hugh Freeze. I actually think Hugh Freeze is a better coach. I just think Hugh Freeze doesn't have the athletes like Kiffin does yet, and it's going to take him a year or two more before he does. And that's kind of what it came down to. Kind of like the Ohio State Penn State talent's going to just show out in a game like this, and it did.
Yeah, I was about to say it wasn't really adjustments that won it for Ole Miss. Like Tennessee, Bama, Nick Saban won the game for you. I know the defense played lights out in the second half, but Nick Saban won that game for you. Where this game, it wasn't Lane Kiffin. It was just the talent, the athletes that won it because Auburn doesn't really have anyone. You need a great coach on Auburn to win this. And I do think Hugh Freeze is a good coach, but obviously he's no Nick Saban. He's no Kirby Smart. He's no Dabo Swinney, even though Clemson's not that great this year. He's not a great coach. And maybe if he gets the athletes, he can, compete with the West. But in this game, even when they're at home, just can't really compete.
So I know this game you want to talk about. We're going to go out and head out west to LA, where Utah took down USC 34-32. Obviously a huge penalty at the end of the game against your guy, Barry Alexander.
Not my guy. Don't
He,
say that.
he was very, very emotional after that. I really kind of felt bad for the guy. I know you probably didn't at all, but I
No.
mean, well, Bryson Barnes getting the start for Utah, kind of surprised by that. And I didn't hate it at all, actually. The way that he was going to attack their defense probably helped them a little bit better than Nate Johnson. We didn't even see Nate Johnson in this game, but what are some of your takeaways, Jake, from this matchup?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get it out there since I don't want to beat a dead horse. Bear Alexander, he's just a me player. He's probably my lead. It's either him or Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton kicked a person after he scored his touchdown. Stupid. I just I mean,
Uh,
I know you don't like you saw it though. Why'd he kick him? We're not going to talk about it. We can talk about it later. Anyway, they're my two least favorite players. Just because I know them personally, and I know the reasons they left Georgia. So I know there's more people like them in college football. These guys, they're just
oh
me.
yeah, there's people like that everywhere,
Yeah,
dude.
no, there are. I just know who they are. Like I've interacted with them, and so Bear Alexander, just a me player. He left Georgia because he didn't want to compete. He just wanted it to be all about himself. And hey, he went himself, got him a nice apartment in LA, but then goes and everyone saw his pass or roughing the passer, which turned into targeting. I don't really know the rules that well. I know it's leading with your head. I don't know if your face mask is considered your head because some people are saying it's a clean call, some people are it's not. Face mask is if it is the rule, it was obviously targeting because all he did was just do this to Bryson Barnes, knocked him down, obviously roughing the passer. Stupid play. Don't know why you're doing that. But the one people didn't see is I think it was in the third quarter, maybe. They had just gotten a stop on third down. USC did in the goal line. Bear Alexander throws the running back to the ground after the whistle, gets a personal foul late hit. Then Utah scores a touchdown. So I mean, that's what Bear Alexander is. That's what they were getting. That they knew that. And so then I don't want to say he lost this game for you, but he kind of lost the game for you. But I do have a lot of takeaways. Bryson Barnes played his butt off. That his jersey, it was white at the beginning of the game. It was green at the end. He was getting hit. He was taking a lot of hits. Did not slide. He had 10 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown. Just did not slide at all. But I mean,
Tough. He's tough as
yeah,
nails.
I think the biggest thing coming away from this game, and I mentioned it. I said I'm scared about this USC offense because Arizona showed a way to stop them. Notre Dame stopped them, and then Utah stopped them again. They only scored 25 points this game. They scored 4 touchdowns, and so Caleb Williams didn't bring his A game. Marshawn Lloyd didn't bring his A game. It wasn't a clean showing from them, and this Utah offense, if they had any sort of quarterback, this game wouldn't have been close because I know Bryson Barnes played his butt off. There's a lot of effort, but he didn't play. I know the box score looks like he played well, where 14 for 23, 235, and 3 touchdowns. But his interception was really bad. 3 straight to him. It was a pick 6. But I'll talk about him later more. Sion Vaki, don't really know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Absolutely went off. He's a safety that was playing wide receiver / running back for him, kind of like Dylan Bell does for Georgia. 5 receptions, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then 9 carries for 68 yards on the ground. And then also played a little bit of safety. He had 2
Is that
tackles.
worthy of a helmet sticker for you, Jake?
Don't spoil it. But he played really well. Like I said, this USC team, they've been on my list 2 straight weeks. I'm not putting them on again at the end of this week. They're not a top 25 team. Their offense kept them there. And then now that they're not performing, obviously their defense sucks. And Bear Alexander makes them even worse. I think they're realizing that, the fans, because did Bear Alexander even have a tackle? Yeah, he had 6 tackles. Good for him. Had a tackle for loss. He played pretty well this game. And it's funny because he did play well. And I was going to say that even after his late hit, I was going to say he played pretty well. Then he wants to go and lose the game for him. So
I know the USC.
I know a lot of people felt bad for him, but I didn't. Don't make a stupid.
We all know you didn't feel bad for him.
Yeah, don't make a stupid play.
One thing kind of with the Penn State game, they got away from the run game. Marshawn Lloyd dominated early, 7 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown. He scored a touchdown in the first quarter. They completely went away from him. Only 7 carries to your number 1 running back. And they were not down by a lot at one point in the game. I mean, it was kind of back and forth. They just really put the ball, and I get putting the ball in the Heisman Trophy winner's hands, but you got to let some of the guys around him make some plays and take some of the pressure off him with the run game. And Lincoln Riley just didn't do that in this game. They really got away from the run game for whatever reason. I mean, they were averaging 6.3 yards a carry as a team, and Lloyd himself was 12.3, and Austin Jones, the backup, was 6.2. So I think that's on Lincoln Riley for not for abandoning the run for whatever reason. I have no idea why he did that. But also at the same time, scoring 4 touchdowns against the Utah defense is pretty good. And I get USC we hold them to a higher standard because of who they have on offense, who their head coach is, and just kind of what they've done in the past. But scoring 28 points or however many points they scored on the Utah defense, I mean, that's a really good showing, I think. Utah's defense is obviously one of the better defenses in college football. I'd probably rank them in the top 10. And I'm going to keep USC in my top 25 because of that. Like you said, though, they have no defense. But I still think there are a lot of teams out there they could beat, a lot of teams due to their offense. I'm not ever going to give them – I'm going to give them a shot in every game they play because they have Caleb Williams. But let's be realistic. We know they can't hang in there with the top 10 that we're going to have in our top 10 this year because of how bad that defense is. So, and like you said, we've been finding out these identities all year, and USC has known their identity since week 1, and that is no defense. We're going to have to score at least 40 points a game to win, and they weren't able to in this game, and that's just kind of what it comes down to.
And this is the reason I don't want to say he can't ever be. I don't know if he'll go to the NFL, but Lincoln Riley is not and has not shown the ability to be a top 5 coach in college football because he does not care about the defensive side, which I have no clue why he doesn't.
You think he would learn by now.
You would think so. It's kind of like Iowa on the opposite side, where Iowa just, who cares about offense? Lincoln Riley, the exact opposite. Who cares about defense? This is why, because when your defense doesn't perform against Notre Dame, when your offense doesn't perform against Notre Dame, you're going to need your defense to make some stops. They can't do that. When your offense doesn't perform that well against Utah, you're going to need some stops, and you can't do that. So I don't know if he's ever going to be able to do it. Maybe he'll go to the NFL soon with Caleb Williams. I don't know. In my mind, he'll never be that top 5 coach because of that. You can't just keep Alex Grinch after he sucks. So,
yeah. And here's another thing. I mean, let's transition to the other Pac-12 game where the 1-5 Arizona State, who's now 1-6, almost beat Washington after coming off a win against Oregon. Just a weird weekend in college football. We saw a lot of the trends of the best teams getting taken down to the wire. Obviously, this was Pac-12 after dark, after midnight, whatever you want to call it, wherever you are. I did not stay up to watch this game. I woke up this morning and saw the score, and I was completely shocked. I did not expect that to have been the final score. Going back and watching some of the plays in this game, Michael Penix struggled. I mean, it was tough day for him. 27 of 42 for 275, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They had no run game, 13 carries for 13 yards as a team. They abandoned the run because of it just wasn't working. And I'm not necessarily a proponent of that at all. I think you should stick with the run. But again, they're going to be more of a pass heavy team, and they didn't score an offensive touchdown in this game. They found a way to win without doing it, and they turned the ball over a lot as well. So it just a bad game for Washington at home against the 3rd string quarterback for Arizona State. We won't touch on this game much just because of how bad Arizona State is, but man, that does not a good look for Washington at all. And they dropped some spots in my rankings because of that look. Just not good at all from a team after they come off a huge win against Oregon. Yes, it could have been an emotional letdown. Yes, they could have lost some focus after such a big win, but you want to see these teams again when you play the worst team in your conference. You want to see them control the entire game, and this game just was not controlled by Washington at all.
Yeah, I will say Arizona State plays some tough football. They have a lot of close losses. Lost by 12 to Oklahoma State, lost by 14 to USC, lost by 3 to Colorado. They have some close losses. They're not a horrible 1-6 team. They are probably the worst in the Pac-12 though. But I mean, the reason I'll say it now, they didn't drop anything in my top 25. This is what I expected, a little bit uglier. Obviously, Michael Penix didn't play well at all, but we know he's a Heisman finalist probably. He's not the player he was in this game. So I don't really care how he played in this game. Their defense played well. So that's a plus. But you're coming off an emotional week against Oregon. I knew it was going to be I didn't think it was going to be a trap game, and it almost was, but I knew they weren't going to play that well. I had Arizona State covering easily. So even when this game was 3-7 at half, I felt like Washington was going to come out with a win. Could have been ugly. I think they had did they have four? No, they had 3 field goals in the fourth quarter, or 2 field goals and a touchdown. But I mean, ugly game for them, but it was what it was. They'll bounce back. Who do they have next week? Stanford. So again, an easy win, and then you go on the road to USC. The fans it's so sad. They obviously pump crowd noise. I was watching it. And the stadium is like less than halfway full. It's so weird. And you can tell over the TV it's so loud. And I know it's not the fans. So
Yeah.
that's embarrassing. That's why I say on the road. So you have a week to rebound, and then you got USC.
All right, last game I want to review before we head into our next segment. And that was, I was correct about the Miami-Clemson game. 28-20 in overtime. And Miami didn't even need Tyler Van Dyke to win this game. They started true freshman Emory Williams in this game, who was not impressive really at all. I mean, 24 of 33 for 151, 1 touchdown interception. I thought the Clemson defense actually played solid in this game. Clemson has no rushing game. Obviously, no talent on the outside. It was kind of just Cade Klubnik versus the world, but he made a horrible decision in overtime to pull the ball and try and score on the rush, and it really cost him the game. Cade Klubnik did, and Dabo's going to stand by his guys. Obviously, that's just kind of the coach he is. But obviously, he said some pretty interesting stuff in this post game press conference as well, in regards to their. Oh man, we won't talk about what he said just because it was kind of pretty controversial, but definitely Dabo's an interesting guy, and I think the way he's coached this season just kind of shows you why Alabama fans don't want him as the next coach after Nick Saban. I certainly don't. Clemson falls to 4-3. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Certainly not me. I had them in my playoff to start the year. It's lack of talent. The coaching hasn't been great. Offense has looked abysmal. Defense hasn't been great either. Miami controlled the time possession in this game 37-22. So that's kind of where it is. And Clemson outgained them by 1 first down, but turnover battle, Miami won. Miami only had 1 turnover to Clemson's 3. That's kind of where you can sum the game up there. And Miami stayed with it. Better teams pull these games out. And Miami did not need their starting quarterback to do it. And they did it at home, and really obviously their environment at home is kind of like USC you were just talking about. So very impressed by Miami for being able to win this game, especially with their backup quarterback. Just kind of shows you the testament of their team, and after 2 tough losses too.
Yeah, I'll tell you where this game was lost for Clemson. It was those 3 and outs at the end of the third quarter. Or sorry, it was at the end of the game. They had 2 straight 3 and outs. 3 plays 5 yards, 3 plays 0 yards, and that took a total of 1 minute and 20 seconds when they were up by 3. And so that's where they lost it. And then also the 3 turnovers that they had. Miami, I don't think they're a great team. Obviously, I've talked about them, always overrated. I didn't see them winning this game. It very, very much surprised me. I thought it was going to be close. But just Clemson, a huge letdown. And it's the same scale with Penn State, but much larger, where not nearly as great of a defense, but they're a defensive-led team with 0 weapons. Absolutely 0. Their tight end did well, 5 receptions, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. Outside of that, they don't have anyone. And it shows in this game. Will Shipley, 15 carries for 44 yards and a fumble. Couldn't really do anything. I didn't watch the game. I assume Miami was loading the box and making Cade Klubnik win the game, and he couldn't do that. So very surprised by that outcome for me. Just, ACC, I think we learned this week, not nearly as great as what we thought it could have been. Duke and FSU, great game until the end of it. But North Carolina, not very great, I guess. Clemson, not great. Miami, not great. So looks like it's FSU or FSU or bust for them.
Yeah. Well, look, good review. Another pretty good week of college football. Sadly, this upcoming week's not going to be near as good. This upcoming week might be the most depressing one of the season so far, but we'll
Yeah.
still have some games to break down for you later in the week. Now, let's revisit some of our best bets, which for me did not go well at all. Not only did my
We're
lock of the week not
we're
hit, but I went 2 for 6 on mine.
we're back to how we were in the beginning of the year,
Yeah,
where
it was
you
tough.
went 3 for 12 this week. I went 5 for 12. On mine, I went 3 for 6. On you, you went 2 for 6.
Yeah,
Not great. My lock of the week didn't hit either. It should have hit. Joe Milton sucks. I blame it on him. Tennessee cover should have hit. Ended up not. Obviously UNC Virginia. I thought that game was going to go completely different. Virginia covered and money line win, which I can only imagine that was probably like plus 2,000.
yeah,
The one game that did hit, I was big on it. Utah USC. I thought that should have been my lock of the week. I was just a little bit scared of it. That should have been mine. You bet USC in that one.
yeah.
But on the bright side, 2 out of my 3 player props hit. Marvin Harrison, I was exactly correct on the analysis of that. They peppered him. We'll see more from him later, but like over half of Kyle McCord's yards. He was the only way to move the ball. John Reese Plumlee hit, but Dylan Gabriel did not, sadly.
Yeah. Well, I only did 2 games and 4 players. So one of my games hit and one of my players hit. So we'll start off with the good. The game that hit was Illinois versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin ended up winning 25-21, and the line was 4.5. And I took Illinois to cover. So covered half a point.
I took Wisconsin. Bad beat.
So that was close, very close, but ended up the half point helped me out. And then Theo Johnson, the Penn State tight end, ended up having 39 yards receiving, and all we needed him was to get more than 19. And so that hit. But here's my misses. My lock of the week was Mississippi State, Arkansas covering the 7. KJ Jefferson just didn't have it. Threw a couple picks, had a really bad day. Arkansas, both defenses stepped up and showed out, but in the end, Mississippi State was able to score the touchdown to beat Arkansas 7-3 in an absolute just disgusting game. So glad I didn't watch that game. But yeah, definitely surprised by that outcome, especially Arkansas at home.
Did you see they parted ways with their OC?
Yeah. Dane Enos, former Alabama quarterback coach, was here when Jalen Hurts and Tua were both here. Was at Miami for a little bit, was terrible there, terrible at Arkansas. He hasn't been good when he's called plays, so that definitely surprised me.
I think it's now obvious. Arkansas not the best 2-6 team in the nation.
Yeah.
How do you score 3 points against a bad Mississippi State team? Also, Will Rogers wasn't playing.
Yeah, Mike Wright started for Mississippi State.
He didn't play well.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And I had Jalen Milroe over 227.5 yards passing. He threw for 220, so we barely missed on that one. Really was
I got that one right.
Really was just one completion away from that hitting. And then here's my props to Deacon Hill. Deacon Hill had over 100 yards passing at halftime. So good for him. They still lost to Minnesota. Another controversial call, losing 12-10 at the end of the game. That's crazy. I would have been pissed off.
Let's hit on that in like 1 minute. What did you think of it?
I could understand where the ref was coming from when he made the call. It does look like a fair catch, but I think in the situation you have to understand what the player was signaling for, and the referee just did not.
I don't know what he was signaling for because he
was signaling to move out of the way. He was doing this to move out of the way,
but like no one
over his head, and there was a shot of him talking, like yelling at his teammates, and he was saying move away, and he was doing this. But it looks like he was doing a fair catch signal, but he was like telling them to move out of the way. I really just think it was unfortunate. And it's a tough spot to put the referee in. So
my thing is, because as a punt returner, I know from experience, not from my experience, from like seeing Georgia's practices, you are taught not to wave your hand at all, because it happened in the Tennessee game. It's why they were down at like the 4-yard line at the very start of the half. Is because the other guy gave like a T, their symbol of letting it go, and then they didn't let it go. And so refs are going to catch that. Even if you don't mean to do it, you cannot wave your hand, because that looks like a fair catch, because there's no reason to wave it over here. And he was I think he was screaming poison, which means to let it go. So I don't know. tough, like you said, tough spot to put the ref in. I think he made the right call. I'm probably on the wrong side of that belt. I mean, Cooper DeJean, great cornerback, but you can't make that mistake. You can't make it.
And then my final player prop was the Iowa running back, LaShawn Williams, who I gave a helmet sticker to.
Iowa did
61 and a half.
not
They
do
couldn't
you
run the
a favor.
ball. They could throw the ball with limited success, very limited. So I was just completely off on those two. But you got to give credit to Brian Ferentz and being able to throw the ball for more than 100 yards, but still
You
lost
know,
to Minnesota.
we're not giving him credit. He put up 10
Yeah.
points in this game. He's
Yeah.
obviously getting fired.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was the biggest. No, he was the biggest one disappointed about that call because that meant he does. I assume he would get those 7 points just because his dad probably doesn't want to fire him. But now he doesn't get those 7 points. And so every game he doesn't average 30 points, he has to average more. And so I mean, I don't know the math on it, but he probably has to average 35 points a game for the rest of the season.
Probably. That's not going to happen.
Obviously not doing.
Yeah. Well, how about we transition to helmet stickers and then we'll finish off with our top 25. I know both of us have 3 helmet stickers. Mine is a little bit more defensive oriented this week. I've got 2 defensive players and only 1 offensive player. But do you want to kick us off, Jake, with yours? Your
I'll keep mine relatively short. Only one of these players we didn't really talk about. So number 1, I'm giving it to Marvin Harrison. He had 11 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown. He was 162 of 286 of Kyle McCord's passing yards, like we both talked about. And he was the only touchdown. Like we both talked about, though, Marvin Harrison, the only offense for him. Don't know what this game looks like without him because it could have been very, very ugly. He's the best receiver in college football. Not even close. Going to be probably taken second in the draft behind Caleb Williams. Really good player. Worthy of a helmet sticker for me.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to visit the atrocious SEC game, the Mississippi State-Arkansas game, and I'm going to give a helmet sticker to Mississippi State linebacker Nathaniel Watson. He had 14 tackles, 5 of which were solo, and 2 sacks against Arkansas. He was a disruptor in the backfield. He did pretty well in the coverage game as well, covering the short passes. But it was in on almost every play. He was flying around, kind of similar to my next guy that I'll have, and I'll just go ahead and do that. That's the second time helmet sticker for me, and that's Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell. He had 10 tackles, 6 of which were solo, 1 tackle for loss, and obviously the huge fumble recovery for a touchdown against Tennessee. The turning point in the game, I thought, was when he was able to scoop that up. Obviously, he didn't force the fumble, but was just in the right place at the right time. But he has been flying around, and I know Trez Marshall, guy transferred from Georgia, got the start in this game, but we only saw him for 1 drive in this game, and he did not play the rest of the game. Jahad Campbell came in and really just took over with his speed, was able to fly around, was all over the field. So Jahad, another linebacker, him and Nathaniel Watson both really impacted their games, specifically obviously on the defensive side. And we're really flying around and in on almost every play, I felt like, when I was watching. So credit to both of those defensive guys in the SEC.
I was kind of surprised you gave it to Jahad Campbell because watching from the TV, it looked like Deontay Lawson played better. I mean, I know Jahad Campbell
finished with more tackles. He did finish with more tackles, but I gave it to Jahad just because of the fumble recovery for a touchdown that he had. And I also felt like he was able to run down Joe Milton a couple times where Deontay didn't. And he did cover the screen pass pretty well and was in there a lot on the run defense. So I did want to give it to I got to give it to Jahad. I mean, he had one of the craziest plays of the game that, I'll certainly remember that play forever.
This is no hate to you at all. I don't understand why people praise the people who get scoop and scores. That play is made by Chris Braswell. All Jahad Campbell did. There was no one around him. He took 5 seconds, actually. He took like a second and a half to pick the ball up and then ran with it. And then the running back almost ran him down. Anyway, I hate it how announcers praise like the guy who recovers the scoop and score because the play is all made by the guy who causes the fumble.
I understand that, but
there's a couple.
Jahad did more than just that in the game.
Yeah.
But he did. That was let me just tell you that play, Jake. I'll remember that play for my life.
That's what I was saying. This just gave a segue into me opening up my rant about that because I
2-timer helmet sticker though.
I don't enjoy watching. My number 1 helmet sticker goes to we mentioned him. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sion Vaki. I don't know. the safety from Utah, who is now an offensive weapon for him, 9 carries for 68 yards, 5 receptions for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 2 tackles on defense. Played great this game, won the game for him. Without him, Utah probably lost. And so it's just crazy how a safety can do this. And so I think in my mind, he's the number one helmet sticker from the whole nation, just because he's not used to playing running back and wide receiver, and he went off this game.
Well, my final helmet sticker is going to go to Oklahoma State running back Ollie Gordon II. Want to talk about a dominant performance against West Virginia. 29 carries for 282 yards, averaging 9.7 yards a carry and 4 touchdowns. He was huge for the Oklahoma State offense, who I thought they were dead at the beginning of the year. They lost to South Alabama at home by like 31. And they've come back 5-2. They still have a shot at the Big 12 championship game, landing an appearance in the game and possibly even winning it. I mean, they have been on a roll. I think they started the year off 0-2 and they're now 5-0. So a big win against West Virginia, a team that looked like they were pretty good, but obviously West Virginia has dropped 3 games in a row now. So we'll see what kind of happens over there in Morgantown. But Ollie Gordon II definitely worthy of a helmet sticker this week after that great performance on the ground.
My final one's going to Cody Schrader, the running back from Missouri. 26 carries for 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big part in their win against South Carolina, 34-12. As a Georgia fan, like I said, Tennessee, Ole Miss, it gave me great pleasure that I'm not as scared for those games anymore. This game I am more scared for because Cody Schrader has played great this season. They have a run game, they have a pass game. That defense is much improved from the beginning of the year. So I think Missouri might be the second or third best team in the SEC. I think they could compete with a lot of people in the nation. They might be the most underrated team out there. I think they're really good, and they're going to cause some troubles for us, especially without Brock Bowers. But Cody Schrader, first time receiving a helmet sticker, great job by him.
All right, well, let's finish this off with our top 25. We'll start off with 25, go down to 21. You guys know the rules. I'll kick us off. 25 for me, I've got Air Force coming up from unranked. They're the only team that I had unranked last week that's featured in my new top 25. Up 1 spot at 24, I've got James Madison. Up 1 spot at 23, I've got Liberty. Down 6 spots, we've already touched on this team a lot. I've got USC at 22. And then down 1 spot from 20 to 21, I've got Duke. Obviously, we didn't really touch on their Florida State game. They lost 38-20 against Florida State. Riley Leonard was able to start the game, but got re-injured in this game and had to leave early. And you could tell when they left, they were a completely different team without him. Maybe would have even had a chance to win the game with him if he would have stayed on the field. But obviously, I'm not going to dock them too much, especially they still played a good game without him against a pretty tough Florida State team on the road. So Duke's going to come in at 21, only down 1 spot.
Yeah. My only team that re-entered, have they re-entered? Yeah, they've re-entered. But the only new team is Florida. They're at 25 for me. They're not ranked in the AP poll, but I know they were right outside that 25. And I think Florida can easily beat James Madison on a neutral site field. So obviously they get the nod there. North Carolina, I got them at 24. Obviously, we talked about that. They drop a whole lot. Although I still do think they're a top 25 team. I just think it was a bad game for them. 23, I got Air Force. 22, I got UCLA. 21, I got Kentucky. Obviously, I don't have USC in my top 25. I think they lose to everybody in the top 25, including Air Force. USC is not it for me.
Yeah, so let's do 20 through 16 for me. Down 2 spots, I have the Tennessee Volunteers at 20. Kind of got what I was expecting of them. I expected a little bit more from them against Alabama, but still think they're a very quality team and could shape up some conversation there in the East. So only down 2 spots for them at 20. At 19, up 3 spots, I've got the Florida Gators. Obviously coming up with a huge game next week against Georgia. I think they're going to fare a lot better than other people do. I'm actually going to have them covering in the game. I think it's going to be a close game.
What's the line?
16. It's a big stretch without Brock, especially, and we'll see how Georgia plays without him. Obviously, they got a great time to have a bye week, so they could prepare to have without Brock. So we'll see what it looks like. But got Florida up 3 spots at 19, up 3 spots, number 18. I've got the Utah Utes. Obviously, a huge performance against USC. Cam Rising announced he's not going to play for the rest of the year. Kind of expected. Probably going to take a medical red shirt and be back for an 8th season in college football next year. At 17, I've got North Carolina dropping 6 spots. an ugly loss for them. It happens, sometimes but it doesn't happen to the best teams out there. So they dropped considerably in my rankings. Then at 16 up 3 spots, I have Kansas State, who drummed TCU this past week. I thought TCU was going to fare well in that game, and I didn't think they were going to win. I thought they would cover the 7.5 that they were plus on, but Kansas State beat them, I think, 41-3. They found a new quarterback in Avery Johnson over Will Howard. I'm sure we'll see Will Howard on the move this offseason because he's a very quality quarterback, but Kansas State just looks like a different offense with Avery Johnson in there. So I'm going to keep them at 16, up 3 spots.
Yeah. At 20, I got Tulane. 19, I got Louisville. 18, Tennessee. Tennessee actually went up 1 spot for me. There haven't been that much movement. I think we're now in a season, unless there's huge upsets like Utah over USC and obviously Virginia over North Carolina. They're just going to remain in these spots for the most part. So Tennessee, I mean, they looked better than I thought they did in the first half. Looked way worse than I thought they would in the second half. So it is what it is. 17, I got Duke. 16, I got Utah. So kind of exact same analysis from you in all those games.
Yeah, 15 through 11, I've got the Missouri Tigers up 2 spots at 15. At 14, I've got Oregon State up 1 spot. At 13, I've got LSU up 1 spot. At 12, I've got Ole Miss up 1 spot. And at 11, I've got Notre Dame up 1 spot.
Yeah. I have the exact same spot for Missouri. They're my number 15 team. 14 is LSU. I would love to see that game again. I wish that would have been like week 12 because I think Missouri would win that game now already. I just think Missouri needed a game like that to see what they were up against. That's part of the reason I'm so scared for them against Georgia, even though they're coming to Athens. But Notre Dame, I got them at 13, Ole Miss at 12. Way to go into Jordan Hare and get a win. And I still got Bama at 11.
All right, 10 through 6. At number 10, I've got Penn State dropping 6 spots. Obviously, wow. Their offense, I think they've got one of the best defenses in college football, obviously. But Drew Aller in this offense, not many playmakers. They could probably run the ball pretty well against some teams that are below them. But I just see them having a lot of trouble on offense against teams that I have ranked ahead of them. And that's why I put them at 10, especially now that I've seen them against a really quality opponent in Ohio State. At 9, I've got Florida State up 1 spot. At 8, I've got Oregon up 1 spot. At 7, I have Washington. They stayed the same as last week. And at 6, I've got Alabama up 3 spots. Love the resiliency that I saw from the team. I think the defense is in a spot now where I'm very confident in their ability. They're a national championship defense. The offenses continue to get better and better week in and week out. And I just keep telling myself, Jake, if Alabama can put together a whole game like they put together a second half, this team would be scary. And I think sooner or later it's going to happen with Nick Saban being your coach. Alabama's going to put together one of these games. Now, whether it's against LSU, Kentucky, or Auburn, it's going to happen in one of those 3 games, I think. If it doesn't, I'll be very scared, but I think it will eventually happen. And this Alabama team, I mean, they still got everything in front of them. They're still national championship caliber, even with all the question marks preseason, and that some of them that they still have on offense. So they really went up in my rankings because of what I saw this past weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. They're still national championship contenders. I mean, this is the year to have all those question marks because every single team has them.
Yep.
Everyone does. Not a single. I mean, Michigan is the one team that hasn't, and they've obviously played the worst schedule out of everyone. They haven't played a single ranked team. I don't even think they've played a team ranked in the top 50. I think Nebraska is the closest one. Maybe they're top 50. I don't know. It's just awful, their schedule. So they won't play anyone until Penn State. But no, exactly like you said, they're just at 11 because I got what I thought I was going to see. Kind of the exact opposite of Tennessee. They played way worse than I thought they did in the first half, played way better in the second half than I thought they would. But I thought it was going to be a second half team. And I know Bama ended up covering, but Joe Milton just sucks. But 10 still got Oregon State, my Beavers. They still have national championship written all over them. They could go and win it. Probably not. But hey, they're a top 10 team. What were they at in your rankings?
14.
Oh, that is way too low. You need to move them.
No. They're going to stay in that range for a little bit. Until they beat a Washington, someone like that, maybe even USC, they're going to stay around 14 for me.
That's fair. But that won't be for a while. They I
Yeah.
believe they'll be they have Arizona, Colorado, Stanford. So
Oh, yeah. Well,
but then they have Washington, Oregon in the
yeah.
in their last two games. So
Yeah.
I think it's okay. But anyway, I got Texas at 9. Way to escape with a win. Penn State dropped 3 spots. They dropped to 8. I mean, it was what it was. You played against a really, really good Ohio State offense defense in Columbus. So it was tough, but also I think that's good to get that game out of the way. And maybe it helps you against Michigan, and maybe you can go win because Drew Aller's been there. Hasn't been there, done that, but he's been there. So maybe he can go into. Do you know if that game's home or away for him? For
I
them?
think they're at home for the Michigan game.
Okay, well that's a good thing
Yeah.
for him. So
Yeah.
that game's gonna be fun to watch towards the end of the year too. But 7 I got Oregon, 6 I got Oklahoma.
Yeah, and my 5 through 4 are both teams that really struggled this weekend, but just because I think they were flukes and they played well, I think they could be complete teams or they are complete teams. At 5 up 2 spots, I've got Texas. Now, we really got to see what happens with this team looks like without Quinn Ewers. So this upcoming week, this really could change, and especially when Quinn Ewers' timetable is updated, when we get a good sense of how long he's going to be out for, they could go down in the rankings, and I think it probably will end up like that. I think Malik Murphy and Arch Manning are 2 very quality backup quarterbacks, but I think this team's going to look a lot different without Quinn Ewers. So
But you have Texas in last week.
I had 7. I raised them 2 spots.
Up 2 spots.
Yeah, I raised them 2 spots due to how Washington played. I mean, I dropped them that because of how Washington played, and then Penn State's loss. I think they could beat Penn State right now. And then at 4, I've got Oklahoma up 1 spot. And folks, there's a new number 1 for Sutton in my top 25. At number 3, down 1 spot, I have Georgia. At number 2, down 1 spot, I have Michigan. And at number 1, I've got Ohio State. I just have to put them up there, up 2 spots, because they've got 2 really quality wins, one on the road, one at home. They show that they're a complete team. I'm still got question marks about Kyle McCord at quarterback, but man, they've got the best receiver in the country in Marvin Harrison. And if they can find ways to get him the ball a lot and effectively, they're going to be a tough team to deal with. And that defense is for real. When they're full strength at running back, they're a really good rushing team as well. If Kyle McCord can just get better, continue to get better week in and week out, they're going to be a very scary team. So I've got to give them the nod and give them number 1. They deserve it, especially after their wins over Notre Dame and Penn State. They've got to be number 1 in my opinion.
I still have them at 5. I think
That's crazy.
I think we see it different ways. I think they have the number 1 defense, potentially. Number 1 or number 2. It's them and Penn State for me. But that offense is not good. Kyle McCord is going to have to show something for me where he has not done that. I know he's played well against, I don't know their schedule, played well against Rutgers, whoever else, their bum teams they played, Western Kentucky. But in those 2 big games, he has not shown up. Marvin Harrison has. Marvin Harrison didn't show up against Notre Dame, but they still got out of there with a win.
You got to give him some credit for getting Marvin Harrison the ball, though. It's not like he's just handing the ball off to Marvin Harrison. He's got to get it to him. So
I would if Marvin Harrison wasn't wide open.
He's not wide open every play. I mean, he was on some plays, but
Marvin
McCord fitted in there a few times.
A couple of times he did. He made some good throws. That's what
He made some good throws.
Yeah, every top 10 QB.
He's just not CJ Stroud, and I think that's what Ohio State fans and what a lot of us are used to.
I don't even think he's close to. I don't think he's a top 25 QB, which is.
But I don't think we have many of those quarterbacks in college football this year either.
Top 25 QBs? We have 25 of them. I don't think he's top 25. He's not good. If Marvin Harrison was, I don't know, let's say Keon Coleman, I think they lose this game because Marvin Harrison had to be a game breaker to win. Because you weren't able to watch all of them, dude. There were some bad throws from Kyle McCord, and especially in that first half, he was making Penn State's defense look better than they were because he was just missing throws that weren't absolutely wide open. So I mean, it can improve. If I see Kyle McCord go and play against Michigan and he plays well, they'll be my number 1 team. They can jump. I mean, I know that's the last game of the year, but if they're still at 5, they can jump 5 spots for me if I see Kyle McCord play well against a quality opponent. But he just hasn't shown an ability to do that. And I think if it comes down to not even a shootout, just a game where you have to score 28 points, I don't know if Kyle McCord can do that against a quality defense. But number 4, I got FSU's. My number 4 stayed the same. I got FSU at 4, Washington at 3, Georgia at 2, Michigan at 1. I know that Washington game, it sucked, but like I said, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt after they beat Oregon, had a great win against them. They escaped with a win. That's all that matters for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still have pretty similar top 25s there. Similar ways in which we rank them, just different outcomes, different ways we've seen. So, and obviously this will all be solved by the rest of the regular season and through conference championship weekend. It'll all work itself out. This is obviously all opinionated.
That's
That's
a great thing. No one cares about what our rankings are right now. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Something we like to do, and something that brings controversy into football, and it's an interesting way to look at everything, and especially the teams. So again, episode 20 done, wrapped up.
Big 2-0.
Yeah, good. It was fun. I've enjoyed these first 20 episodes and can hope to continue to do more and more with you, Jake. Really look forward to talking each week. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing. Continue to share our YouTube channel and our podcast channel. We really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you guys or hearing from you guys later this week. If you want to comment or anything, please do. We'll check those out as well. So thank you guys, and we'll see y'all later this week. Roll Tide.
Go Dogs.